Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Black Men with Purpose podcast. For those of you joining us for the first time, it's a pleasure to have you with us. This is a safe space where we share our thoughts on a multitude of topics in hopes of helping Black males, young and not so young, overcoming obstacles and challenges that could be hindrances to happiness, productivity, and success. We believe that through our experiences, successes, and failures, we can have some conversations that might help other Black males in their respective journeys through this thing we call life. And on this week's episode, well, first of all, we are happy to be back. It's been a few months. We took the summer off as what we usually do. And so we are back until the holidays. So probably about 5 episodes or so before we break for the rest of the year. But again, on this week's episode, the topic is going to be family dynamics and how to navigate them. Specifically, we'll be focused on blended families, single parenthood, non-custodial parents, and fractured family dynamics. So I think at least one of us can speak to each of those topics. So we're gonna jump into this thing.
Great topic. I think that family dynamics, especially in our communities, is something that we should all be talking about. I think as I thought about this topic and I uh, looked back in the Rolodex of my own journey, uh, I have had some, if not all, of these experiences at some point, and and the one thing that I didn't have, at least early on, was a lot of experience navigating that space. And I think over time, of course, you learn as you go along. But the one thing that has always been consistent is uh, a belief in family, having a strong family, and doing whatever it took. Some things traditional, some not so traditional, to make sure that what I did reflected how I truly felt. So doesn't mean that we don't all have, situations that we have to navigate. It just means that we have to be willing to do the work, right? I think if we look around this country, for sure, we can see what, broken families, fractured families, uh, disengaged parents uh, can do to young people who ultimately become adults and start their own families, right? And so I look forward to having this conversation, but those are my initial
Okay.
thoughts.
Well, I was definitely just want to hop in real quick and say I agree with everything Rod said. I'm lucky that I come from a two-parent household. Um, Never expected to be a part of a blended family like I am now. My wife with my oldest daughter, which is my bonus daughter. And then having the fractured relationship that I have with or had with my biological daughter. I never thought or imagined in my wildest dreams that I would be part of a blended family, but it's been quite the undertaking. It's been good. It's been bad. It's been different. Um, I've learned a lot. Being able to interact with you brothers or other folks that may have been from a single family household or single parent household, trying to get some pointers from those folks, being friends with some women that that split with their former spouse, and we're at a place where they wanted to not let the father see their children, and knowing what I was going through, with that from that dynamic, I learned a lot over the years, so this is definitely a great topic. I'm looking forward to diving even further into it as we go along today.
Regarding this topic, but just my initial thoughts are Rod said something that resonated in the fact of he said something along the lines of how not having experience in it and all that, and so that's how probably most of us felt, right? I mean, it's first time going through a specific situation and, trying to kind of muddle your way through it as best you can. And I think oftentimes one of the things that I want to say to, anybody listening is that just understand that you don't have to, I know oftentimes we feel like we may be going through certain things alone, or we're the only ones dealing with a certain thing, and that's just does not have to be the case. If you're struggling through something regarding a family dynamic situation or situations, you can always reach out to others who may have dealt with it themselves and hopefully dealt with it in a way where they were successful, in kind of navigating each of those situations. So, just don't, you should never go through anything alone if you don't have to, right? And I think most times you don't have to. So just know that there are others out there who have been through the same situations and are certainly willing to help you get through those things. So yeah, and I'll delve more into my specific situation and how I navigated it as we go along.
Yeah, I agree with everybody saying. I think with blended families, it's going to be some crazy stuff that goes along with that. But I think if you don't bring the crazy, everything will work out. And I think when people go into that saying, "Hey, this is crazy, it's jacked up," but a lot of times, if you don't bring that craziness to it, if you bring, I'm not saying you always got to, take the back seat to everything, but sometimes it's some stuff you realize in blending a family, some stuff not even worth it. You know what I'm saying? And so you got to decide what's worth the fight. And I think when you're trying to get that point where you have a successful blended family, you look back and say, "Hey, some of the stuff we argued about, was it really worth it? Was it really worth it? Was it really, not speaking for 3-4 months? Was it really worth it?" And then you got to look at the end result is how is it going to impact your kids? And I think when you look at it from that point is how does my attitude, how does my crazy that I bring to this, how is this going to impact my kids? And you look at it that way. A lot of times you won't say or do something crazy just because you don't want to impact the kids or impact the generation coming after you. So that's been my way of thinking. It's like, okay, it may be crazy, but let me not be the one that's bringing the drama. Let me not be the one that's bringing the crazy. And if I can do that, then, hey, I'll go back to my corner, and we'll talk about it later. But I think that's the biggest way to try to help blend families is, as much as we might want to cuss somebody out, slash tires or whatever, at the end of the day, you got to say, okay, let me minimize the crazy that I bring to the situation.
I think I'm really excited because we all bring a very unique perspective. A lot of our perspectives diverge. There's a lot of similarities there, and then there's a lot of unique factors that we'll all get to talk about. And I think that's going to be excellent for us to share our own personal experiences, how we navigated them, how the impact, the pluses and the minuses, the goods and the bads that we can get from it. But I'm also excited about an opportunity to maybe talk about the historicity of some of the concepts, broken family, single parent, the history of family, blended, so forth and so on, because we understand that the specified nature of a family is a recent historical event. Depending on how you look at history, some of us believe that society is older than others. So depending on how you define society and how long mankind has been, but just to look at other elements, like when you talk about blended or extended, or, Byron talked about the importance of the children. What about the importance of the parents and the multiple generations and community, and how all these issues impact a family dynamic, and how we repurposed some things, how we've narrowed some things, and how some things can be scoped out. So I'm just excited to have all these conversations and to see what the brothers got to say about family dynamics. So let's get it.
One thing you just said, I love too, John, about the, how this is kind of not a new thing or whatever, but I think about the fact that oftentimes we wish we could return to the past on certain things, right? We feel like back in the day, things were done better than they are now in a lot of ways. And that's true. But one thing that I think is better now than it has been in the past is when we talk about something like family dynamics, even though family dynamics has been around since the beginning of time, right? Since Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, talk about dysfunction. But I think that being able, when you can now take something and codify it, which is what we do in this day and age, right? We take these things and put them into these systems. I think it allows you to be able to say, okay, we can take this thing, again, codify it and say, okay, how can we work with this? What can we do to improve this thing versus not having a name for it? I think sometimes we do need to name things, and kind of helps us to be able to talk through it and work through it a little bit better. So I like that you said that.
Just to jump back in now, I would tell you the one thing that that really jumps out, for me, and I think it's in the quote that we'll get to later on when we end the session, but it's the idea of family and influence of family, especially by men, really boils down to your level of commitment. That word really stands out to me. I would tell you, and I've, gotten, I've been remarried and had bonus children, and I will tell you that I struggle with the idea of biological versus not, right? Because I think that for me, being in a family dynamic where you may have not been the birth father for the kids has nothing to do with your level of commitment to being a father figure, and providing the care and feeding, the love and affection, the attention, the unconditional love, I should say, that comes along with being a parent, and being the leader of a family, or whatever role you take on. But I think it's your level of commitment to doing that, and not only in a situation where you might have kids involved, for instance, that were not necessarily biological, but you still need that level of commitment, even with kids that you did help procreate, right? Because think about those that, kids that grow up in homes where both of their biological, quote unquote, biological parents are, but yet one might be absent still, physically there, but otherwise not. Does it have any lesser impact on that child than if it were a parent that wasn't biological, that provided them the level of commitment, unconditional love, and affection and attention that they required? So that's one thing that I do struggle with, because I think a lot of times, the term biological or not is weaponized, and that's the part that disturbs me, because if I'm committed, if you're committed, then you're committed, right? And I think the message needs to be, it's hard to impossible to love this woman that you might be married to, but not have that same love for a child that you might not have helped bore into the world. You can't do one without the other. It shows up, right? And a lot of times, any parent, especially mother, worth their salt, is going to balk at that if they find that treatment to be different like that, you know. And I just think it's damaging when you want to start treating kids, especially, different because of this quote unquote term of biological versus not. So I am real interested to hear what you brothers might have to say about that, because I will tell you, I've always struggled with that. I mean, I know me, myself, and my level of commitment, but I've heard a lot of different stories, some horror stories about people struggle with that.
And Ray, I'm assuming you're probably about to jump in, but before you do, Rod, I wanted to ask you a quick question because you mentioned something, and these are things that I've had to deal with myself, obviously, with having a blended family. But how you mentioned that, you talked about showing the same level of commitment to your bonus kids as you do your kid, not and how a woman who's if she's worth her salt, balking at it if she notices some differences. So with that said, how when you ran up against a situation where maybe there was discipline that needed to be handed down, for lack of a better word or term, and again, we're talking about trying to treat, your biological and your bonus kids equally and all that. How did you navigate those situations?
Yeah, great question. And that's a great point, because I think that is a touchy topic, right?
Absolutely.
And so the way that I chose to handle it was to have the conversation with my spouse, right? So that we're in agreement, because I think that you have to be in agreement there before you can even think about disciplining anyone, right?
Amen.
So and so that was how it was. Here's a situation, here's what I believe, here's why I believe it. Do you have a problem with that? Yes or no? If you do, then let me understand why you have a problem with that, because I don't understand. And really just talking it out that way and coming to an agreement where, you know what, that does make sense, or that's not something that we should get wrapped around the axle with. I think that that's fair for any kids that live in the home. This should be the house rule. And so then it became about what are going to be the house rules and the standard for the home, rather than, oh, I'm singling out this kid because they're not my biological kid, where really it's just a house rule. Biological or not, doesn't matter whom or when, everyone lives by that rule if you're a kid in this home. So
Love it.
yeah, and it worked out that way because, one, it did not cause friction amongst us, and we could always present the united front, because this, and when I talk about the level of commitment that you need, it really goes back to, we have to be on one accord, if we're going to have the level of peace and tranquility that we want to have within our family structure, no matter what it is, and it makes sure that we're being consistent in our message to the things that we want our kids to understand, that this is the standard. It's not negotiable. It's just the standard, and guess what? And if you get grown and leave here and you come back, the house rules never change.
Right.
You know what the standard is? No, you can't come in here at 3 a.m. I don't care if you're 45, right? Because if you're 45, you should have your own spot anyway. But if you need to come in at 3 a.m., you should have somewhere else to go. So no, the house rule is the house rule. The standards are the standards. They're non-negotiable. And I think those are the types of lessons that we want our young people to get before going into the world, and then have to deal with the world not giving at all on what the standard is. So that's kind of always been a consistent message, and I believe it works.
Good stuff. I appreciate that response too.
Absolutely.
And also, if you're 45 years old, your days of coming in at 3 a.m. should be long over anyway.
Yeah, some people still want to be out in the streets, you know, but they also should have their own place for sure.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And if you're visiting, yeah, the house rules the same, you know. You're hanging out with your guys, you know, and you get you a hotel.
Definitely good stuff. Rod, you touched base on a lot of things that I wrote down. The discipline of your bonus kids, that's one of the things that I did have. I made sure I had a conversation not only with it was a previous spouse, but I had the same conversation with her ex. It's like, okay, the children are here with me, and if they step out of line, there is going to be some form of discipline. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be physical, but there is going to be discipline because, as you said, these are the house rules, and if you're living under my roof, that's just the way it's going to be. That was the agreement that my then wife at the time had. But then also the interaction between the kids and the parents, and even the grandparents. We had to make sure that we had the standard or the rules set for the kids. Christmas time was big. I never forget that my mom had said when I had bonus kids by my previous wife, well, Christmas time rolls around. I'm going to buy for Elise, and I'm not buying for anybody else. I'm not going to buy as much as for the other kids as I'm going to buy for Elise. And I'm like, well, that's wrong, because even though these kids weren't made by me, they're still mine. So if you can't do equal for all, then don't do for any. And my mom will tell you that I told her that, I stood by that. I stood on that because that was just, for me, that was fair. If I'm saying that these are my kids and you treat these kids as my kids, they're ours. And the same way goes with the treatment or the discipline of the kids. It's like I didn't feel comfortable with spanking my ex-wife's children. If I got called to the school because it was a problem, well, there was a different form of discipline that I had for them, but it putting hands on them just wasn't it, because they weren't mine. I haven't even spanked my own daughter. My daughter's going to be 29 here pretty soon. I never spanked her. So I just couldn't do that. But I just felt that the interaction between the parents and even the step parents needed to be addressed. Even with Simone's dad, when he found out that, when he knew that Stephanie and I were getting together and that we were moving in and what have you, and he knew his daughter, who was of college age at that point, was going to be coming home for the summer and staying with us or what have you. He had concerns because that's his baby girl. I understood.
And for those who may not know, Ray, your Stephanie is your current wife, and
yes, Stephanie is my current
Simone.
wife.
So
Yeah, and yes, my bonus daughter is Simone. Absolutely. So Simone's dad, had a little bit of apprehension because here it is, his daughter was going to be in a house with someone he didn't know. And again, I completely understood his point. And when Stephanie brought that to me, I'm like, not a problem. I understand his point as a father. I understand where he's coming from, and I'm going to have that conversation with him. And I didn't have it on the phone. The next time we got together face to face, I pulled him aside and said, "Hey, look, bruh, I understand what your concerns are, but I want to let you know, man to man, and I'm looking you eye to eye to let you know that I look at Simone as mine, and I'm going to treat her and protect her as such. So if she has a problem and she doesn't feel comfortable coming to you, I expect her to come to me. Now, if it's something that we can work out between the two of us, then we'll get it squared away. But guess what? As her father, because you are active in her life, I'm going to bring it to you so you understand this is what our daughter is going through. You know, she just didn't feel comfortable with talking to you about it. But once that we have gotten everything worked out, here's where we are. Or if we can't get it worked out, I'm going to include you in it because you need to know as her father, because you are active in her life.
Oh, no, I
But
was going to say, I like that word being committed because I was on the other side of that where I had to, work with another man and my daughter living in their house, part time. So, we all had to be on the same page. So that means, my daughter's mom, her stepdad, and myself, we all had to be on the same page when it came to discipline. When it came to, if she was on punishment at their house, we had to be on agreement that it was consistent, that, it was at my house. So it wasn't like my place was a free for all, if you will, just do whatever you want to do at daddy's house. I can't wait to go. So, when we got to the point where when there was PTA meetings, guess what? All three of us showed up for, PTA meetings. It took a moment to get there because, initially, how it is. Oh, I'm not being in the same place with these people. You know what I'm saying? But it took a moment to get there because once you get past your own emotions, your own feelings, you understand that, again, like I said earlier, that your child is going to respond to how you handle the situation as adults, because believe it or not, they're looking to us as the adults to work it out. So if we can't work out as adults, what we expect for them to do. So I think being in that place where I had to learn how to interact, conversate with the other household to make sure we were all on the same page. And that, again, that goes back to Rod's word of being committed. And so that means even being committed to situations that you necessarily don't always have control of. And I think all of us on this call have all been in situations where we always felt like we're in control. But blended families is all you're going to have is committed, because there are going to be some times that you're not going to be in control. And then you got to ask yourself, am I still going to be committed to the process?
That commitment level goes both ways with, the husband and the wife. With the parent and the step parent, that has to go both ways. Reason I say that is, again, I'll go back to my previous marriage. My ex-wife didn't treat my daughter like she was hers. So that created some friction there as well, because again, I'm treating your kids like they're mine, but yet you're treating my kid like she's just mine and not yours. So I remember my daughter telling me, I'm not going to mention her name, but she's like, Miss So and So was only nice to me when you were around, and I'm like, what? Because I never saw the other side. I never saw the other side. But after, as my daughter got older, she was like, "Yeah, Miss So and So was never nice to me unless you were around. Otherwise, she wouldn't speak to me. She wouldn't hug me. She wouldn't talk to me at all." And I'm like, "Wow!" And I literally felt that small, and because I should have known these things, but it wasn't for me to know. But I'm glad my daughter was comfortable enough to come and tell me, even though it was after she and I had split up, but at least she told me. And now that was something that I actually started paying closer attention to. And now Stephanie treats Elise, my daughter, like hers, and because I expect that, because if I'm treating Simone like she's mine, I expect you to treat Elise like she's yours. And we have that agreement. So I just want to say that commitment level definitely goes both ways, because I know we've talked about the father maybe not having that level of commitment, but that the mother also needs to have, the stepmother also needs to have that level of commitment as well.
For me, I think from a blended family perspective, I had the typical dynamics that you would expect of a blended family, right? But we had the added um, pressure or dimension of being interracial, right? So here I am coming into this relationship with, me being black, my daughter being black, her being white, her two daughters being white. And so, initially when we first started talking and dating and all of that, that didn't come up a lot. But as we realized we were going to get serious, then those conversations had to be had. So we had to have the conversation about our daughters for one, but then two, our moms. Um, because I had no idea how my mom would react to her. She had no idea how her mom would react to me. So, we were kind of like, well, hey, it's kind of going to be what it's going to be, but we have to, introduce and do all those things. So we'll see what happens. We were fortunate in that my mom was very accepting of her. After she called her and had a conversation with her, unbeknownst to me, I didn't even know that she had done that. But that's a funny story that we talk about now. And her mom accepted me. Rest in peace. Her mom has passed. But um, we were fortunate. I know not everyone is that fortunate. One, with it being blended, but two, also being interracial. And then we also were fortunate in the sense that our daughters all got along right from the get up, from the very beginning of them meeting each other, which we didn't introduce them. Like, I wasn't introduced to her daughters right away, and she wasn't introduced to mine right away. It took a little bit, but once they all got along great, and they were young at the time. She and I have been together for 12 years, this month actually. And so they were a lot younger then. I think my daughter was 14 and hers were 12 and 9 at the time. Obviously, they're 26, 24, and 21 now. But we were fortunate in that we didn't have any issues with that. Now, that doesn't mean there weren't some challenges, like when we talk about discipline and things of that nature. And you know, we're all raised different, right? So it's not even just a black and white thing. It doesn't matter. Like, even if she'd been black, if we're raised different, then we have to talk through some of those things. And I obviously, or I shouldn't say obviously, but I was not, unfortunately, as, I guess, prepared or smooth with it as Rod was in the beginning. And talking, I learned later that, yeah, this is a conversation that we have to have. But my initial thought was, hey, look, this is how I was raised. This is what the rules are going to be, period, regardless, right across the board, doesn't matter. But she wasn't raised the way that I was, and her kids weren't raised the way that I was, nor the way my daughter was raised. So there was a little bit of friction there, I think, early on, but we had to talk through that. And that's on me, right? The conversation, I should have had the conversation instead of being so adamant about, hey, this is what standards should be. I should have had the wherewithal to have the conversation first. Like, hey, look, like Rod was saying, this is my thought on this. What's your thought? Help me understand if your thought is different from mine, and then come to some sort of agreement. I think we eventually got there, but that's not the way that it was in the beginning, which it did cause a little bit of friction, but we worked through that. So I love Rod's answer. And again, that's the way that I should have done it from the beginning. You live and you learn, though, right? But yeah, again, we've been very fortunate in our situation, and the fact that everyone gets along, everyone likes each other, and we don't have any really contentious situations like that. Again, that's not to say that everything has been smooth and perfect, but as it relates to some of the stories that I hear regarding blended families, we really didn't have a lot of those issues. So I feel blessed and fortunate in that sense.
I just want to say, because this came up in a conversation I had at work, actually just today. And I think that it's true in really any type of relationship. And we were talking about team building and the importance of, recognizing uh, and respecting one another's differences, right? So I'm real big on people being who they are, right? Bring your authentic self to the table, right? And then we work around the edges for those things that may be in conflict with other teammates or other people that you work with. And the one thing we talked about today was, and we hear it all the time, it might even, sound cliche-ish, but when you stop and think about it and actually apply it to whatever situation you're in, it does kind of make sense. And that's first seek to understand and then be understood. The problem comes in is that people want to be heard first before they're willing
Yeah.
to listen.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'll listen to what you guys say, but you got to hear me first, right?
Yeah.
So, and if everybody takes that position, then that's when you have the conflict and you don't get much done. So, and I like to hear people out. And I always tell them it provides me insight into really where they're coming from and recognizing the fact that because we're all raised differently and we have different experiences that have helped shape the lenses through which we see the world, and especially in relationships, you know. And so I hear them and then give them my perspective. And then people are like, wow, well, yeah, I agree with you. Okay. And my thought is always, well, if you agree with me, why didn't you think of that yourself? The fact is that in your subconscious, you always knew that that made the most sense. But because you've been doing it this way for so long and it's been unchallenged, unquestioned, you just can continue to do it. Right. You know, so I thought that was interesting. And I try to think about that and apply it. You know, sometimes if you get too emotional about it, it's hard to stop and think sometimes. But yeah, but when you stop and think about it, like, okay, yeah, let me understand first. And then hopefully I'll have my opportunity to be understood.
I was gonna sit this one out because I don't have any adult experience with blended families, but I thought about it. I was like, you know, as a kid, you know, my mom dated because my parents, I don't ever remember them together. So they got divorced very early in my life. And, you know, my mom dated and a few got serious, moved in. I think all of the marrying stuff happened after I had gotten old enough to take care of myself. But, you know, and I always noticed, man, these cats would come in and they were big on discipline. You know, hey, discipline, discipline. And I never felt like any of them loved me. They just was ready to discipline me. And you know, I think and I always tell my mom this is not something I blame you for, but that did leave me subjected to some abuse as a child. And you know, abuse is a part of my story. But I think what it did for me was I've dated women with children. Like that's never been something that was a prohibitive factor to me, even before I had a kid. But what it did for me is that I always, if it's a blended family, especially when you're talking about children, I lead with love because everything has to extend out of love. And I always try to consider like, this is a privilege. This is a human. You know, we grew up. I brought you into this world. I take you out. But it's like different, man. You know, it's just like these children didn't ask to be here. And, you know, it's a blessing. And, you know, I wanted to lead with love, get to understand. Just like Rod said, I wanted to seek to understand. I wanted to see, you know, where they were coming from. And I think that shaped me going forward because I seek a lot of understanding because I bring a unique situation to the table as I'm dating. And I seek to also understand the other side, especially the privilege of dating someone that has children, you know, to get to know and extend love, like the opportunity, you know, because at this point in my life, biologically, I probably won't be a grandfather, but I look forward to being one and, you know, to being there for young people like that. And I think, you know, it has to start with, when you talk about that, it's got to start with love. You got to be curious and you have to care and you have to really want to get to know and love. And when we start anywhere else but love, you know, it can be problematic. So I would just say, you know, if we talking to young people about blended families, man, lead with love and let your discipline flow from love, not from the desire to be, oh, my daddy was a disciplinarian, my granddaddy, you know. so that would just be my input, just as somebody who's been on the other side of the blended family and experienced it with maybe some negative consequences.
I think that for you, John, as well as Rod and B, I think y'all have the demeanors. I think ever since I've known all three of you, that's your demeanor, right? Seeking first to understand. That's not something that came natural for me. And I think y'all all know that. In my younger years, that's not how I rolled. That's something that I've had to learn over time with age and wisdom. And I left you out, Ray, because I would say you probably more along the lines of me. But that's not
No
something that
doubt.
just came. Yeah, that's just not something that came natural for me. And I still work. That's something that I still work through. But at least it's something that as I've aged, I recognize and I can work on it. And I have continued to work on that, and I'm much better than I used to be. But yeah, unfortunately, that's not something that came natural for me. And the other thing I was going to mention too is that we've all talked about the kids um, in these blended families. And I'll make this quick, but I think one of the things that's very important to remember is that, and not everyone will agree with this, but in my opinion, the kids have to come second. The marriage has to come first. Your spouse has to come first.
Hmm.
Yes, you have to talk about, you have to work through issues with the kids. The kids are important. Obviously, you love your kids, but at the heart of it, at the center of it all, you have to keep your marriage first, in my opinion. So,
I agree. And it's funny that you said that because I had a conversation with my daughter, you know, it's something simple, and it's like, when I pray at night, I tell her the first person I pray for is my wife because that's my wife. Then I pray for my daughter. Not that my daughter is not important to me because she is one of the most important human beings in my life. But the first person, the person that comes first is my spouse. So I agree with you, Kev. Go ahead, Rod. I didn't mean to cut you off, bro.
No, you're fine. I was just gonna say, that's what makes the evolution of Kevin Danley that much more remarkable. If we have witnessed, I am very proud of that brother. But and I was just gonna, end with this. I know John wants to move on to the next topic, but think about how much people are not taught or how much is not instilled in them from the time they were a young person and getting into. And that's why most people enter into parenthood so uninformed because there are a lot of things to navigate that we are just quite honestly not prepared for.
amen.
And so then the kids end up becoming sort of like a science project where we're just trying to, figure it out and see what works and what doesn't, And that's why, I think it was a great point you made where the marriage has to come first because you have to be on one accord, right? And I would even say this for any men out there that might be listening that are going into a relationship or even already involved in a marriage. It's so important that as the man in your home, that you provide the vision for what you want y'all's life to be like together as a couple and as a family. And y'all have that conversation stemmed from there. And I think that vision then becomes your rule and guide, your compass for success throughout that relationship, that marriage, parenthood, even in a blended family. So,
Well, when it comes to single parenthood, I don't have a lot of input because, even though I can certainly talk to the non-custodial parent thing, but with the single parenthood, um, my ex-wife, um, and I have always raised my daughter together. I mean, she was the custodial parent, but I was with my daughter, multiple times a month. I had her. So unless you consider the times when she was with me being a single parent, I don't feel like I have a ton of input. I'd rather, say that for, those of you who have more experience with it instead of me I could talk to it, but I'd rather we use the time for you all who can really speak to it to do so.
Being a single parent, it goes back to sacrifice. When you got to sacrifice your time to make sure your child is taken care of, whatever it is. Sometimes and sometimes that means you got to sacrifice people that you dating. I remember I was dating one young lady, And I told her, I was like, hey, well, me and my daughter going to this event. And she was like, well, why don't you cancel your time with your daughter and just hang out with me? I said, okay,
Wow.
this is what we're going to do. Either you can
Wow.
go with us or you can stay home. But I'm not canceling my time with my daughter. And so being
Good
a
for you,
single
bro.
parent, being a single parent, you got to, you know, set priorities. And again, there's going to be some stuff. There's going to be a whole lot of things that, you know, how many concerts and road trips you probably have missed out on because you sacrificed that time, you know, with your children. And, you know, I just believe it's going to pay off. I mean, I'm doing this a second time around with my son, but I believe it paid off with my daughter. You know, I actually, when I first moved to DC, when I came to DC on that Javers project, when I came to DC, Indiana had called me and was like, hey, son, you know, we don't have no people of color in recruiting. You know, we want you to come back and be the RS in Indiana. And I was like, no, I'm gonna turn that down. Because I felt like at that time, because my daughter, her first 5 years, we lived in different cities. So now actually being in DC, being there for a couple of years, being able to go to PTA meetings, you know, to have her during the week versus, you know, extended summer visit, you know, I felt it was more important to, you know, be here for her. And, you know, maybe my rank suffered, but, you know, overall though, you know, when my daughter looks at it now, you know, I was blessed that one Mother's Day, she gave me a card and she just simply signed it, said, thank you for your DNA. You know, that makes it all worth the while, you know. So for her to sign that and be, you know, Mother's Day, I was like, why you couldn't wait till Father's Day? But hey, we'll take it. But yeah, so I still got that card. We'll tease her about it. But yeah, I just think that when you make those sacrifices as a single parent, you know, I remember two things. My mom and this lady in the mall when I was, I think Kayla was maybe like 2 years old, 3 years old. We was walking in the mall. This lady I never knew. And that's why I say I really believe in angels. This lady I didn't know just walked up to me. She said, if you take care of your responsibilities, the good Lord is going to bless you. The lady walked away, never seen her again. So here's Kayla's 32. You know, she's in a healthy marriage, her own self. You know, they've been married 10 years already. Got a healthy family. So I believe that the sacrifices that you make as a single parent will pay off in the long run.
Facts.
Yeah,
No.
That's some good stuff, B. And before you jump in, John, I've expressed to John numerous times how much I respect and admire him for, you know, his situation. And, you know, I know John looks at it as though, what do you mean? Like this is just what you do, right? It's just what you do. But the fact of the matter is not everybody, you know, has the wherewithal and not everyone sees it the way that John does, right? And it is to be admired and it is to be respected. But my point is, I wanted to say that I respect and admire each of you. I've seen all four of you in action as parents. And, you know, you all, you know, are proof, living proof that the, you know, that stereotype that's out there about Black men and fatherhood is just flat out not true. And I certainly do respect and admire each of you for what you do as parents, as fathers. So I just wanted to put that out there so I didn't forget.
And we appreciate you. We appreciate you. No, that was, you know, what's crazy is on my journey growing up, you know, that was something I never saw. Like a single parent that was a man. Like I don't know if I thought it was impossible, but like you would have caught me in the 90s. You said single parent, I would have automatically thought a woman. I wouldn't have even considered a man. And, you know, early on, I met brothers that were single parents. I met Rod and he was showing up. And I was like, yo, man, you know, I know he got the women, but he's showing up for the children. You know what I'm saying? You know, and but it was to further explain, I looked at you and I assumed that you had the women, but what I was consistently seeing was you being an excellent father. That to clarify that statement.
There you go.
Yeah. Oh.
Oh man.
But it was important, man, to see that. I didn't know what was coming my way. I spent a lot of time as the non-custodial parent, which I didn't see that coming either. I thought, when I said I do, this is the person I'm gonna be with for the rest of my life. So, I didn't see that coming either. But I definitely didn't see this coming. But it was just amazing how when you associate yourself with the right people, you start to see the things that you are going to end up needing. And it was just like I'm at a point in my life right now where people talk about, men don't take care of the kids or whatever. Them kind of men, I don't keep them close in my circle. There's
Nope.
there's no, hey, I wish the worst for you. Nothing. I don't hate them, but like, if that's how you do, you got kids out there and you ain't stepping up, then, you can't have close access to me. You don't take care of your children. And some of those decisions allowed me to see firsthand what it takes to step up every day. And I'll never forget a close buddy of mine, when TK first passed, and I got LJ out there with me in Illinois, and I had the bachelor pad. So I'm trying to figure out how he was 12, so he was smaller. So it wasn't that, but I'm like, man, I'm in a 1-bedroom, I'm chilling. I got my little bachelor lifestyle. How I'm going to incorporate all this? It's going to be tough. My buddy said, hey, man, give it 6 months, man, and everything is going to be to kind of work itself out. And, man, y'all are going to really be, at a place where things flowed. And it was so true. 6 months from when he said that, we had got us a different spot, there was a flow to it. But, with single parenthood, I think some men make the mistake of thinking that it's all transactional, and you really hear this when you talk about what is my child support being used for and this, that, and the other, because we know there's people getting over on both sides. But man, let me tell you something. Let's just say I was getting some child support. Let's say I was getting the child support that I paid. That ain't, thank you, but that ain't going to alleviate the stress of every day. And I got to figure out what to feed LJ every day. Like, I don't get to choose it some days. Like, every day I got to come up with what's for dinner. Like, like when he's sick, I'm the one that's got to take care of him or go to school meetings and all these other things. And I think sometimes when you're not in that day-to-day grind, like, I'll say something different, like a non-custodial parent that was there and then something happened to the relationship and then you split. Yeah. But there's some guys out here making kids and they ain't never even stepped foot into being a full-time parent. They've been drive-by all the time. And so everything to them is transactional because they have the privilege of the child being, for the most part, well taken care of every time they come to see or come to visit or come for pickups. But the maintenance of a household and keeping a child safe and nourished and, emotionally safe, man, that's a lift, So when you say that, Kev, I appreciate it. And you're right. I don't look at it as, oh, it's this big thing. Cause I'm like, well, what's the other option? Not to be there for my baby? Like, I can't fathom that. Like, that doesn't even sit right with me. So, but I do appreciate where you're coming from. And yeah, man, single parenthood, there's a lot of different ways that we could kind of talk about it. But I will say this. Single parenthood is maybe slightly inaccurate in my situation because of the village. And I consider all of you a part of this village. And I can do a better job of incorporating the village because, y'all are always like, hey, man, I'm just thinking about you, man. Ray will just pull up on, hey, brother, just thinking about you, man. You all right? You need to talk, But to have a village, like, it is such a blessing to know that we ain't doing this on our own. Like, this ain't solo dolo. Like, I've got a dedicated community of people that love and care about us and check in on us and make sure we are all right. So, yeah. Before I just keep talking.
And you are so right too, bro. Let me tell you, I've ended 2 friendships with brothers over them being, when I found out they were deadbeat dad. That's happened. Deadbeat dads. Had that happen 2 times. Had to tell them like Tupac, just because you lost me as a friend doesn't mean you gained me as an enemy. I still want to see you eat, just not at my table. Be gone.
Yeah, and it's just like, brothers that, John was talking about the money. How can you, and I'm not going to mention no names, but you got certain football players out here that play for the Miami Dolphins that got, 4 baby mamas, 10, 12 kids with 4 baby mamas. I worked with a young lady and she literally said her brother had 22 kids with 9 different baby mamas.
Wow.
So no matter how much money you make, I don't think you can throw enough money at a situation like that when you got your household so disconnected like that. You know what I'm saying? And even if you bring all the baby mamas together and live in the same house, it's a lot, man. And just
Cam Newton had that one doctor on his show, man. She set him straight.
Oh, she set him straight.
Set him straight.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. So, you could say I'm a single father and I pay, but I just think there's more things to being a parent besides paying. Because you can give your kids everything, but if they don't have that nurturing connection with you as a father, especially girls, and all of us know, I know for me, I've dated women that got daddy issues, bro. It's a wrap. You know what I'm saying? And it's not everybody, but when they don't have that first connection with their father, that's challenging. And we need to look at that as men, for women, for our daughters and our sons. How are we impacting them if we don't have that connection with them? And you can be a single parent and still have a connection with them and not be in your house every day. And
Absolutely.
I think you can successfully do that by being engaged, like we talked about earlier, being committed and understanding the sacrifice that you got to make as a single parent. It's not always about the money, but how do you connect with your kids and connect with your family emotionally?
We got to do better. That I would tell you, yeah, we just got to do better. If you have kids walking this earth, you got to be committed. It goes back to what I said about the whole blended family. It just doesn't matter. You got to be committed. Beating your chest and say that you got a kid over here or a kid there, and no, are you committed? What are you actually doing? I would tell you, I can't even tell you how many times I walked into a parent-teacher conference and was the only male there.
Same.
Year after year after year. In fact, one of the teachers pulled me aside and was like, "Mr. Hector, you're always here." I'm like, my kid still goes to school here. Both of them. Yeah, I'm here. There's nothing and there's no place I need to be that's more important than this right now. The sad part is that they were shocked about it.
Yep. Yeah.
And so I would just say, man, we have to be present. We have to show up for our kids. Period. I can't tell you the number of people that I couldn't date anymore because, wow, you sound like you had these amazing kids. When do I get to meet them? You don't. We ain't there. You don't. Well, what do you mean? No, you don't. Oh, is that why I can't come to your house? If I have a kid living at my house, that's exactly why not. My kid don't get to meet everybody that I might happen to go on a date with.
Right.
No, I don't even want them to conjure that up in their minds to think that that's okay. Dad, you're that guy. No, No, if it's something serious, they'll get to meet the kid at the
Yeah.
appropriate time. And if not, then it just don't happen. You know? And if you want to keep talking about it, then we can be done. I mean, really, because you know that tells me that you're concerned about something that shouldn't even be a concern at this point. All right? I'm not asking to meet your kids. Well, you can meet. I don't want to meet your kids. I don't know if I'm gonna like you.
Right.
You know, but we have to be willing to have those real conversations up front and not let it be about, oh, I want to sleep with you, so I'll say and do anything that you want me to for that to happen. No, that's not important either. Because if that's all you offering, I can get that without any emotion attached any day of the week. If that's really what it was, you know. So no, I just think as men, as fathers, dude, it is such an important responsibility, and you know, we have to show up and we have to be present for that, whatever it entails.
Yeah.
You know, and guess what? And if you don't want to do that, then don't procreate.
Yep.
Plain and simple, you know. And blessings always to Brother John, because you know you make light of it, brother. I am just in awe of you every day.
Amen.
I mean, literally, you know, brother. So yeah, because it takes commitment.
It does. Mhm.
It takes commitment, you know, and so to display that level of commitment to me is what we should be doing. That's what I look up to when I look at men.
And there's just a lot. And again, and not to belabor the point, but as you said with John, like, and I know he just sees it as this is what you do. Like, what else is there to do? But unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there who don't see it that way, right? And that's what makes it so commendable and respectable and all those things, because there's a lot of people out there who absolutely don't see it that way, which is unfortunate, obviously, you know. But so we would jump to the non-custodial parents. I know, but my part in this, you know, as a non-custodial parent, again, it goes back to what, you know, Rod started and everybody else has echoed. It's about commitment, right? And you know, I was, even though I always give my ex-wife credit, because we did not end on our marriage did not end on good terms at all, and she hated me for a couple of years after. But the one thing she never did, literally from day one, never, ever, ever used my daughter against me. She understood the importance of my daughter having me in her life. And she never, as much as she hated me there for a while, she never, never, ever once kept my daughter from me. And I always appreciate that. And that's been some years ago at this point, 16, 17 years or whatever it's been now. It's been a while. So, um, but yeah, it's about that commitment. Like, you know, when I wanted to see my daughter, spend time with my daughter, that was outside of the weekend, 2 weekends a month. You know, I was able to do that, and I did that often. I was there at PTA meetings, like you said, Rod. Most times, oftentimes, at least, the only male in there. You know, I was at her. You know, when she was playing soccer, I was there. You know, no matter what day, Saturday, doesn't matter, whatever it is, I was there. When she had a track meet in North Carolina, I took her, right? Just me alone. Like, just, it's about commitment. It's about being there. It's about being present. It's not just paying child support, which, yeah, I did that as well. Never once missed a child support payment. That's important, but that's not the most important thing, you know? So, you know, yeah, it sucked when my wife and I first divorced, and knowing that I was going to be the non-custodial parent, that was the hardest part. Just keeping it real, you know, the marriage was, I was, you know, it was over, and so that part wasn't hard for me. But knowing that I would no longer be able to see my daughter every single day was hard. I mean, one of the hardest things that I've ever had to deal with in my life, quite frankly. But you know, I had to, you know, I had to say, okay, well, this is what it is now. So what needs to happen? And I did what needed to happen. Again, I was committed. I was committed. And even on the days when I may not have been with her, when I tell you, there was not a single day from the time my daughter, my ex-wife and I divorced when my daughter was 9. From the time she was 9 until the time she graduated high school, went to college, and then actually came to live with me for a while, there may have been in all those years, in 9 years, there may have been a total of 3 or 4 days in 9 years where I did not talk to my daughter. I called her every single day because that's necessary. It's a necessary thing. They need to know that you're there, that you're involved. Yeah, I may not be there physically with you every day, but you're going to hear my voice every day. You're going to hear me asking you about homework. You're going to hear me asking you how your day went. We're going to all the things. You're going to hear me tell you that I love you and that I miss you. So I think as the non-custodial parent, those are the things that you have to do. You have to be committed. You have to still be present, even if it's not always physically.
Again, it just goes back to commitment, right? Because for the short period of time that I served in that role, it was, and my thought was, you know what, son didn't ask for this, right? I was the one that was not mature enough or responsible enough to do the hard work to keep the family together no matter what. I was selfish.
Same.
Right. And
Same.
And so what I decided though was that he shouldn't have to suffer because of my selfishness or my lack of, right, or my inability or unwillingness to work. Right. So you're going, you're moving halfway across country. Guess what? New car for the ex, because not for any other reason other than the fact that she was going to be taking care of my son every single day. Right. The thought of being broken down or not being able to get to and from doctor's appointments, dentist appointments, or wherever else he needed to be, that was just unfathomable to me. So if I wasn't going to be there to do it, I was going to make sure that all the resources were provided in order to make sure that did not become a thing that causes another level of stress. Oh, you need to rent a place and you can't afford it? Done. Oh, he needs to go to private school? Done. Yeah. Oh, medical insurance, dental insurance, whatever it is, done. And so I say that to say that, as men, when we have a commitment to take care of our kids, that's what it is. And it's not about, oh, wow, well, she's dating someone else now. What? You didn't want her. You wouldn't.
Right.
Well, that's so crazy to me because that's still my child.
Yeah.
That's still my child. What that got to do with anything?
Right? Because guess what? If I won't take care of him or her, and then she meets someone else and they will, now you have a problem with that.
Yeah.
Like, come on, man. What's the foolishness? Right? Foolishness, So buy a plane ticket, rent a car, hotel room to go halfway across the country to go to first T-ball game.
Come on now.
Right?
Speak on it.
Like, what? I can't believe you came. The look on his face, irreplaceable. Did more for me than whatever it could have cost 10,000 times to do that. Now, I watched him pick grass through the game out in the outfield.
Yes, sir.
I got little kids out in the outfield. I sat there and watched him pick grass, and
but that wasn't the point, right?
Right. But it was about showing up and being present, and I wanted him to know that no matter what, no matter what decision mommy and daddy made, I was going to show up for you. And I'm always going to show up for you. Period. It didn't matter what it was, you know. And we have to have that level of commitment as men. No one else can do that. That's not a woman's responsibility, right? So no one else can do that. So
Listening to you and Kevin talk, man, I'll say the best words I can use is I'm envious. I'm envious of you two, because you were able to maintain a relationship with your kids. You know, me, it was taken away from me. Period. Now I know hurt people, you know, and my daughter's mother knew the only thing that she could ever do to hurt me was to take my daughter from me. And she did it. And she did it, you know. But again, hurt people, you know. Being a non-custodial parent, like Kevin, hearing Kevin talk about he called every day. I called every single day until my daughter stopped taking my calls. You know, and then I started, it eventually whittled down to from 7 days a week to 5 to 3 to 1 to, okay, I'm gonna just call once every 2 weeks. I'm gonna call once a month. And then finally I frustrated myself enough where it's like, there's no point in calling. She's not going to answer the phone. She's not going to call me back. You know, that's what happened with me. You know, I'll never forget, I ended up going to Ohio to one of my cousins passed, and she went to the same church as my daughter. And I purposely went in there and looked for the pastor, and I'm like, I want to talk to this man. You know, and I asked him, you know, when didn't know who he was from you know, a hill of beans, and I'm like, I'm looking for the pastor. He's like, that's me. I'm like, okay. Now I told him who I was, and the look of bewilderment on his face was like, you're who? I'm Elisa's father, and I'd like to talk to you after this memorial is over. And I sat in that man's office for 3 hours. Me, him, and my mom sat there for 3 hours and talked about, you know, all of these things. I called every day that I would still come to Ohio for my visitation weekends or what have you, and I show up and nobody's there. Before I left Ohio, I would show up every 2 weeks to see my daughter, and there was a couple periods where 4 months in a row I didn't see my daughter. You know, and this man just thought I was the biggest monster because he was told that I didn't want to have anything to do with her. That I didn't. I knew she was. I knew she was around. The only thing I was doing was paying child support, but I didn't want to see her. When that wasn't the case, you know, I didn't go to any PTA meetings because I wasn't allowed. When I say I wasn't allowed to pick my daughter up from school. They had a list of people that were authorized to pick her up, and me as her father was not on that list. And to have somebody tell you that, it just broke me. It broke me. You know, at one point I was going to pursue custody for my daughter. You know, but I was never going to say that my daughter's mother was unfit because she wasn't. And there was no way to prove it if I had have said it. You know, but that was never going to come out of my mouth. When she graduated from high school and when she graduated from college, I thanked her for raising a responsible young lady. I thanked her for raising my daughter to be a responsible young woman. You know, but I'm envious of you guys. You know, that you were able to still go to your son's baseball game, to take your daughter to a sporting event. You know, I had no clue until 2 years ago that my daughter was in ballet. I had no clue that she was in dance. I wasn't included in any father-daughter dances. Nothing. You know, again, hurt people hurt people. I forgave her mother for all that. We had the conversation last year, and she was like, my daughter called her and was like, why did you do all of this? And she finally said, well, I was hurt. Well, what does your dad want? An apology? And I'm like, and my daughter literally said, Dad, do you want mom to apologize to you? And I'm like, unless your mother has a time machine that can give me back that 15 years I lost, I don't want anything from her except for to leave me alone. I've got you back. That's all that matters. That's all that mattered to me. I have my daughter back. And again, I've got one child, one biological child. I had to rely on going with Kevin to take his daughter fishing when she wanted to go fishing. I had to rely on going with my wife, my now wife, to watch her daughter play basketball and be there in the stands and cheer her. And my bonus daughter could tell me she loved me before my own daughter could, up until 2 years ago. So again, I envy what you guys were able to do. I'm thankful that your ex-wives would allow you or kept you involved or allowed you to stay involved instead of removing you from your kids' lives because they were hurt. Again, I wasn't the perfect husband. I admitted that. I'm never going to be a perfect man. But the only thing that ever mattered to me was being a good dad. And I've got my daughter back now. And I do my best not to relive those 15 years that I lost, because I'm like, if I go back there, I could get stuck there, and that's not where I want to be at. And the truth of the matter is I've got less days ahead of me than I've got behind me. And life is short. And if nothing else, when I talk to my daughter every day now, when I talk to her every day, the words "I love you" flow from her mouth without hesitation, without thought, because before I would say, "Elise, I love you," and her little response to me would be, "Huh." She could never say, "I love you." She couldn't feel it because of what she had experienced, and we've literally spent the past 2-3 years fighting to overcome everything that she had experienced before. So again, I'm appreciative of you guys. I thank you. I'm happy that I'm envious of you. That's just the bottom line. I'm envious of your relationship with your kids, but I'm thankful now I have mine. I've got mine back. Now I've got again 2 excellent relationships now with my bonus daughter and with my biological daughter, and I'm thankful to God for that. So
I think you said something wise in that, you can't get stuck in the past. And I know that situation sucked. I know it had to suck. I can't even imagine. But yeah, you're absolutely right. You have her back now. And as the saying goes, life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forward. So, you kind of you have to, you just have to
yeah,
move on from that. And I know that you have worked hard on that, both you and Elise, to just move forward with the relationship. So that's a wise way to look at it.
Yeah, just long story short, I'm just glad to be simple with some men who understand the importance of fatherhood.
For sure. For sure. Anybody else have anything before we wrap it up? All right. Well, with that, we want to thank each of you for taking the time to join us. As we wrap up this week's episode, we want to leave you with a quote from author and pastor Dave Willis, who said, "Family isn't defined only by last names or by blood. It's defined by commitment and by love. It means showing up when they need it most. It means having each other's backs. It means choosing to love each other, even on those days when you struggle to like each other." Until next time, peace.